Treasure Mountain is a game for 2 to 4 players in which the players control clans of dwarves in a fantasy world, and these dwarves are digging, doing what dwarves love to do most, which is to collect shiny things, but as they do so they need to make sure that they don't get in trouble with one very grumpy resident of the net of tunnels that they are developing. It is a worker placement game, so that's a mechanic that probably you're familiar with if you have played hobby games in the last decade or so. The beloved, trusted mechanic, yes. Or, with a less benign approach, you may think, oh, again, that has been done to death. We've seen so many worker placement games. So that's kind of course, the double-edged sword that you have when you have a mechanic that is beloved, and precisely because of that it has been used a lot, and precisely because of that some people may start feeling a little bit bored by it. So with all of this in mind, let's see Treasure Mountain is able to reinvigorate that mechanic, or at least to implement it, to perform it in a way that is interesting. So let's see what Treasure Mountain brings to the table. Was that a pun? Maybe. This is the board of the game. I find it pretty attractive, and yes, it is a little bit busy, but once you start playing you realize that information on it is really well laid out. There are a lot of icons, but they're pretty intuitive and they really help you remember the various functions in the game, so I'm pretty happy with the board. You will play on the board, assigning your workers to different areas and triggering different actions, but you will also have a personal area where you will have your own tableau, where you will have your own mine. You start with a tile such as this one, with a number of gems of a specific color. So for example, this is green 3 on that tile, on that area, and 4 on that one. And then during the game you will acquire more tiles so that you will expand your mine, you will place more gems on them, and as the game progresses basically you will expand the mine, find gem, take actions to extract the gems and place them in your personal supply, where you will also have coins, you will also have beer, and then you will spend your resources, you will sell your gems to produce coins, and then you will trade coins and other resources for victory points. You continue like this for a certain number of turns, so that depends on the number of players. At the end of the game you have a final round of scoring based on these rules here, which we will cover. You add those points to the ones you already collected during the game. At the point the player with the highest total of points wins the game. Now, this is a worker placement game, so I think it's a good idea to start from here. Each player has a number of dwarfs, and they are numbered with numbers that go from 1 to 5. You then use all of your dwarfs depending on number of players. For example, here I've set up the game for 4 players. And with that number of players, each player only has 3 dwarfs. They start the game in the little beds. Isn't this adorable? This is really totally adorable. The order of these discs indicates the player order. So you always start with the player on top, and then you go down. And the dwarfs will need to be placed on the board in numerical order from the lowest that is available in any bed to the highest. That means that usually the player on top will go and basically picks up the level 1 or number 1 dwarf and places it on a space on the board to trigger an action. Then the next player goes, then the next player goes, then the next player goes, and then we go back this way. However, spaces on the board may have a red area, such as this one, or a white background. That means that when there is a dwarf in an area, has triggered an action in an area with a white background, it can be displaced by a dwarf with a higher number of another player. So actually there is a yellow one there, I'm green player, I want to take the tunnel action, I place my dwarf there, and this is returned to its little bed. So as you can see now, following the rule that it's always the lowest level dwarf that goes next in player order, now actually yellow takes a turn and places this, say, in that area there and resolves that action. And then, ooh, it is yellow's turn again, and yellow decides that they want to take the mine action that was taken earlier by number 1, which goes there. Now green takes a turn, then red takes a turn, then blue, and so on and so forth. So yes, dwarves will go back and forth, but not forever, because ultimately the level 3 dwarves cannot be displaced, and maybe the actions that you want to take are here, where dwarves cannot be displaced. Now let's see what these actions are. Now, like in many worker placement games, the action may feel fragmented. Try to figure out the logic behind all of these actions, because the only way to give you a sense of how the game works is to go through them. And again, the impression may be a little bit of scattered information. Now, one action, if you place one of your dwarfs on the forge action, you need to spend a beer or a gem, and then you'll get to draw an axe token from this bag, which contains axe tokens, hence the name, which may have a +1 or +2 value on them. You take your axe, look at it secretly, and then put it face down in your personal area. These axes will be useful when or if the dragon awakens. What? There's a dragon? I know, plot twist. Just keep watching and you'll learn about that too. Actually, next let's go to the tunnel action. The tunnel action, when you take it, allows you to buy one of the 4 tiles that are available here for the price indicated underneath, which may be 1 beer and 1 coin, 1 beer and 1 coin, or more beer and more coins. And suppose on green player I want to take this tile here, I pay the corresponding amount, and then I reveal a new tile. I slide the tiles down to fill up that area, and I reveal a new one. And then I need to attach the tile to my mine in a way that all of the connections that are already there make sense, that there are no weird connections that go, say, into a wall. And then I place a number of gems there, and the type of gems indicated on the tile. Suppose that later I take this one and I decide to place it, there will be an illegal placement, I place it like this, then there are no weird looking connections or dead ends, and I place those there. And that's how you get tiles in your mine, in your tableau, and also how you get gems on them. Maybe later you want to add more gems to your mine, and that's when you take the excavate action. When you take that action, and you can take it up to 3 times when you reserve it. Each time that you take it, you spend a beer or a coin, and what you do is in a tile you add 3 gems of the type of that tile minus the number of dirt piles already there. After you do that, you add a dirt pile. I know you can meepleize anything, but this is the first time that I see a meeple dirt pile. Isn't this adorable? What happens? Remember, you get 3, for each action you get 3 gems minus the number of dirt piles there, and then you add the dirt pile. Suppose I'm taking the excavate action here. I place 3 gems minus the number of dirt piles there, which right now is 0, so 3 minus 0 is 3. And then I get the dirt pile. So if later in the game I'm taking the excavate action there again, now I only add 2, 3 minus 1, and I put the gems there. And then again. So law of diminishing, and each time you take the excavate action in a tile will give you less stuff. Mine. The mine action is when you actually extract, gems from your mine. Also, this is an all play action. That means, you see those icons there? That means that first the player that selects that action will get the indicated bonus, which is 2 gems of any kind. Then that player gets to resolve the action, then everybody else in player order gets to resolve that action. What happens here is that you choose a color of gems. Suppose in my mine here I decide to take green, and I extract a gem of that kind for each tile in which I have at least 1. After that, I can get a bonus. If I have 2 tiles of that color next to each other, I get to take out an extra 1. If I have 3 tiles next to each other, I get to take 2 extra ones. So in this case, I would get also to take these 2 for a total of 5. So 1 per tile plus 1 or 2 bonus ones. And again, this is very important concept. It's an all play action, so everybody gets a chance of doing that. Similarly, we said we're collecting gems, right? The gem market is another all play action. So the player that triggers it will get 2 coins, will resolve the action, and then everybody else gets to trade the indicated combination of gems for the indicated reward. Say, for example, I have triggered that action and I do have 3 emeralds, so I discard them, I resolve this contract here, I gain 2 coins, I put them in my supply, and then there's a deck of cards and I refill that slot. If I had taken that one, then the card here would first slide and then we would refill that slot. And that is a main way of getting coins. I select the trading post, then pretty much I can take that action up to 2 times and do these trades here. It's pretty self-intuitive by now, isn't it? Temple. I pay 2 coins and I resolve and I get 5 victory points right there, just as simple as that. Also, as long as my dwarf is there, I may reroll a die once every time that I roll my die. Yes, each player has a die, and we'll see in a bit when and how and why you roll it. Then we have the Dwarf King action. When you take it, it's an all play action. The player that triggers it scores 2 victory points right away, resolves the action, and then everybody else can take the action. Basically, you can fulfill one of these, I don't know, quests. You don't need to spend the indicated gems, you just show that you have them. Sometimes it's not a gem, it's other things, say 2 dragon tiles. For example, I show that I have 8 of these gems, I score 5 victory points, then the card is discarded as usual. We slide and fill, and after I've done that, everybody else gets a chance to enter in play order to point to one of these cards, show that they have the indicated resources, and score that card. So we talked about the tunnel already. Very important here, player order. Basically, the dwarves that are here will indicate how the player order goes. So at the end of the turn, for example, the player on top will go first, and then the next player will go next, and the other discs will slide down without changing their relative order. So this would be the order for next turn. Now we get to the dragon. There is a dragon which is lurking in the background, and different actions will possibly anger the dragon, which is represented by moving the dragon on this track. If the dragon reaches this space, the dragon attacks. First, let's see what those actions are. If a dwarf goes to the supply wagon, the dwarf collects 2 barrels of beer, but then might anger the dragon. Every time that you take one of those actions that have the dragon icon, you roll a die, and if you roll 3 or more, then the dragon took notice of you, is annoyed, and moves on that track. Scout action, you immediately collect an axe and you look at this tile, look at the other side of this tile. We'll see in a bit what that means. Tribute, you kind of get to refresh the tableau. That means you can discard one of those cards, some of those cards that we saw there, in case there isn't anything interesting there. Treasure hoard, you just collect 2 coins and again check to see if the dragon is annoyed. Now, when the dragon attacks, the dragon will attack with an attack strength in the range indicated here. So for example, I know that this dragon has a strength of 3 to 6 and this other one of 4 to 7, but I don't know exactly what the value is. It's indicated on the other side, and if I took the scout action, I know what the exact number is. Otherwise, well, I can guess. Also, if I cannot beat the dragon, it was still half of this resource, so this was still half of my gems, or this dragon, if I can't beat it, will still half of my coins. And suppose this is the dragon that we have on top right now. When the dragon attacks, everybody rolls their die, and the result is public. Then everybody can spend tokens, X tokens, from their personal supply. What you're trying to do is to get a result between the die and the axis, which is equal to or higher than the strength of the dragon. Everybody commits their axes if they so desire, then the strength of the dragon is revealed, X tokens are revealed, and we see who beats the dragon and who doesn't. In this case, for example, I have 6, I've beaten the dragon, which has strength of 5. Again, those that cannot beat the dragon will lose half of that resource from their personal supply. Among those that beat the dragon, well, those will not suffer any penalty. Among those, the player that actually has the most will get to take the tile to score that number of victory points, which is super sweet, and the dragon tiles can also be used to fulfill those Dwarf King quests that I showed you earlier. Then the dragon is reset and gameplay continues. So this is how you resolve this thing. Also, these are discarded. So that's an interesting element there. As I said, at the end of the turn, when pretty much the turn is over, when all dwarfs have been assigned and no dwarf can take any action anymore, at that point you reset the board, you check the player order, a couple of other small functions, you move that token by 1 space to start the next round, and that's how it works. You continue like this, turn after turn, until the end of the last turn. You have the final scoring. Oh yes, mine tiles, depending on how many you have in your mine, you'll score the corresponding number of points. Each gold that you have is worth 2 points. Each gem in your personal supply is worth 1 point. Every pretty much the number of gems that you have in your mine divided by half, that is victory points. So it takes 2 gems in your mine to create a victory point at the end of the game. Add these points to your personal score that you had at that point, and the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. I say sometimes in my video, sometimes a game to be good needs to do everything right, not necessarily in any exceptional way, and to have one good idea that feels fresh, that turns things around. And this is what Treasure Mountain does. Everything it does, it performs it in a very smooth way, in a seamless way, which, by the way, is no small achievement. I don't want to sound like it's just something that happens easily. So it performs every part of the game smoothly, but it adds one interesting thing, which is, and something I hadn't seen before, the idea of bumping people, that your worker will bump somebody out of their position, and that worker will become available again, and so you get an extra action. To me, I hadn't seen it before, and to me that's a very refreshing idea, which brings all sorts of interesting possibilities. Basically, if you go early in a turn, and you take an action with your 1 dwarf, which you know is popular, the chances are somebody else will want to take it, you're almost certain to have an extra action, which is no small thing. That means that spending actions which have an opportunity cost to reserve a good spot on the turn track is particularly important. At the beginning I didn't realize what's kind of the point. There are so many actions which are all play. Why would I have to worry about when it is my turn? But at the same time, that can generate extra actions. There can also be cases where, of course, people are like, well, you're ahead, and we see exactly why you place your dwarf there, not just because you wanted it to be there, but because you want that to be returned to you. And maybe other people are going to conspire against that, preventing you from doing that. So there is that interesting elements there, which to me just brings an interesting fresh perspective to the entire worker placement idea. Plus another couple of subtleties there, but I'll leave it to you to discover them as you play the game. In general, this game is very well done. You can see it from the board. It's so well laid out that it really showed that the game has been play tested well, that they took playtesting advice into account, that they created a board that really enhances playability. And when you see these elements, you start getting optimistic, and then you see that the design, in fact, mirrors that. There's been clearly a very accurate, careful work that has been behind the design and the production, and you have this game which is just so smooth. It plays so well. It makes sense. Now, a couple of caveats, of course, which are normal. In most video reviews, you'll have like, wait a second, but and also when it comes to worker placement games, you have that weird element that is that the game can be very simple and fairly complex at the same time. Because the general idea is so simple: place a darn worker and do what the space says you should do. But then you have many spaces, each with its own mechanics. So of course it's going to take you a while to teach all those mechanics, and it's going to take a couple of turns before players see the connections, see the chains that are desirable. Another couple of turns or plays before then players are really starting to use it optimally. Both, going through all of the intermediate steps that they need to go to achieve their objectives, and using that creatively so that they optimize their chances of winning the game. Again, for example, placing things in a position that gives you an action that you want now, and also there are good chances that you'll get the meeple back and use it again, and maybe then use that again, etc, etc, etc. Some of those level 1 dwarfs have been very busy, of course, especially when controlled by players that are very good and that they won the game. So it's not an easy game to teach. You need to have fairly committed, maybe not necessarily hardcore, but fairly committed the players. But then when the game makes sense, well, it really does. It starts feeling intuitive very, very soon, and players will easily realize what they need to do in order to get to certain objectives. One thing you have to take into account is that the game can drag a little. The first game will last too long. Most likely will last too long, precisely because players, even if they have absorbed the rules, they're trying to figure out the strategy. And so they take their sweet time to make the decisions. Analysis paralysis is another dark shadow that looms around the design. Analysis paralysis, again, it's another fact. Even after players have become competent in the design, and even if you tell them the classic golden rule, start thinking about your turn when it's not your turn, so when it's your turn, you know what to do. Turn order is so variable. I mean, the basic turn order is always the same, but actually the time when you take your actions and what actions you take is pretty unpredictable because of the all play actions, which are great actions, by the way, because this way you're involved, you don't have to wait for your turn. At the same time, I'm thinking about, I want to do this and I want to do that, and you take an all play action in another area, and now all of us are like, oh, wait, should I take it? How do I take it? So simply, you can plan your next turn, but before you get there, you may be asked if you want to take 2 or 3 actions, and you don't know in advance, so you can prepare for that. So there's going to be a lot of last-minute thinking, which is simply unavoidable with the fact that a meeple may be returned to you when you did not expect, or somebody selects an all-play action. when you don't expect. So that element on analysis paralysis, you simply, I don't see how that is avoidable. Again, very competent players will be able to adjust their plans as they go. But for most of us, for us humans, it'll be, the game will have moments in which gameplay is slowed down by the fact that everybody's thinking about a new action that somebody triggered, everybody can take, and players hadn't really figured out what to do about it. You can't plan too much in advance, which is one of the advantages. You're constantly asked to think about new perspectives, new angles, new possibilities, because people trigger actions or return the meeple to you, but because of that, gameplay may also be slowed down a little. This being said, despite the fact that it takes a while to really digest, to really grok the game, and the game will have moments in which pace is low, we all loved it. Everybody had such a good time. When people click with the design, it was really so rewarding to think about how you could exploit possibilities, how you could get extra actions, denying extra actions to people that expected one. That's no small fun. We just loved it. Everything goes together so well in this design. It's really rewarding and satisfying. You have the tableau building, you have accomplishing the missions, you have the worker placement, you have really many mechanics, and yet they all come together very well. The dragon will have some randomness to the element, more than a lot of other airtight Euro games out there, but we didn't mind. We really enjoyed it. There's a variant suggesting the rules so that it has less luck, but we didn't feel like we needed that, because actually we love the little bit of uncertainty that comes from how strong is the dragon going to be and how much am I going to roll, which of course puts on you the burden of also collecting axes. That means you have other things that you can't do, and so on and so forth. In general, we really like Treasure Mountain. My group and I, everybody enjoyed it. We think it's a good design with a really good production that doesn't just look good, but really simplifies, really helps with gameplay. Treasure Mountain, a real joy to play.